All right. And we are live. Welcome to Winterviews, Series 4, Episode 7. I am your host, Catherine Silva, Cat for short. And tonight we have with us the amazing, the wonderful Tom Reimer. How are you, Tom?
Hi, Kat. I'm excited to be here. How are you?
I yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm very excited to have you on. Because you're a fellow New Englander, and New England horror is a fun and wonderful topic.
It is.
Um, and I've been meaning to have you on the show for a little while now, and I'm sorry that it's taken 4 seasons to get you on. So
There's a lot of people to talk to, Kat. I get it.
there is, but I mean, you know, you're awesome. So
Ah,
Uh, so for those in the audience who might not know who you are, would you mind giving them a brief introduction?
sure. Yeah. So I'm Tom Reimer. Written 6 books. All of the horror genre, all set in New England, largely in Massachusetts, but stretching to into some other New England states as well. I uh, I formerly was a co-host of a YouTube show called Found Footage Fridays, which is still on. Had to take a step back just to focus on, you know, books and life and family, but big horror movie fan as well. Read and watch movies, read horror and watch horror all the time. And yeah, so I also published a number of short stories. Uh, my books, the 6 of them in order, I wrote um, during the pandemic when we were all stuck at home. I wrote a trilogy called The Glowing. And by the way, all my books are published by Shadow Spark Publishing. So The Glowing trilogy, it's an alien invasion, sci-fi horror set in Massachusetts, in the Berkshire Mountains. I then wrote a book, probably my best known book, most widely read, was it's called Malevolent Nevers, also set in Massachusetts. After that, I wrote Odious Ghouls, again set in Massachusetts. That's sort of a blend. It has a Blair Witch meets Evil Dead sort of feel. So definitely found really inspired by my interest in found footage horror subgenre. And then very recently this year, or actually this fall, my latest book was released. It's called Buoygeist, and it is set in Massachusetts on Cape Cod in 1988. So we'll talk about that.
All right.
That's
Awesome.
me. Yep.
And hell of a cover on that book also.
Yeah.
Like very, very cool.
So this is and lighting is terrible in here, but this is painted, hand painted by the amazing Gemma Amore, who also did the cover art for both Malevolent Nevers and Odious Ghouls. She's just, if you're looking for someone to do your books, do your covers, she's just amazing. So
Yes.
yeah,
Definitely if you can get Gemma Moore to do it, you should.
ask really nicely.
Ask really nicely. Yeah. So as an introduction to our topic tonight, which is New England horror, I'll just sort of briefly explain what that is, although it should really explain itself. But it is horror that takes place in New England. And if you're not familiar with the New England states, it really does feature in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and I believe the last one
Rhode
is
Island.
Rhode Island. Yeah.
Yeah, Rhode Island. Yeah.
I sounded so sure of myself at the beginning of that and then faltered at the end. Um,
It's sort of forgettable, you know.
poor Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So you've written a lot of your stuff in Massachusetts,
Yep.
obviously. Is that where you grew up and are like from
Yep.
initially?
Yep.
Okay.
I was born here. I lived here. I mean, I've lived other places in the world as well, but um, my whole childhood was here. So aside from going away for a year or two here or there, I've almost entirely lived in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
know it well.
Oh
And
yes, very.
where else have you lived?
I lived for a year. I lived on the other side of the world, literally the other side of the world. I lived in the Marshall Islands, which is sort of smack dab in between New Zealand, Australia, and you know,
Huh.
sort of south of Japan, but like
Okay.
just above the equator.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
like I think it's almost exactly the other side of the world. They see like the first sunrise of the new year. It's
Hmm.
really sort of interesting place. Yeah, so I lived there for a year. I spent a lot of time in New Hampshire and Maine in my life as well.
Mhm.
I haven't really lived in any other states in the U.S., but yep, Massachusetts, and then a year in the
Yeah.
Marshall Islands.
Huh.
But I've lived all over this state, and so and again spent a ton of time in both New Hampshire and Maine as well.
Yeah. So you're oh my God. I totally forgot a state.
Which one? Maine?
No, I forgot Vermont. Oh
Oh, you
God.
can't forget Vermont.
Oh my God.
Oh,
So
all those
that's
Vermonters just logged right out of this. They're not watching
I
anymore.
oh God. I feel
Sorry, Vermont.
like such an idiot.
I
Well,
didn't catch it. I didn't
my
catch it.
partner in crime who lives with me is from Vermont, so I
Ooh,
will not live that down.
you can
That's
edit that out. Right. Oh, this is live, right?
yeah, that's a rough one. I'm sorry, Vermont. Moving on. So my first question, yes, Jose, I can edit. If only I could edit in post. That's not. I don't think that's part of my ability. Unfortunately, I don't have the premium version of of StreamYard. Sadly,
It's just Vermont.
yeah. Um, so my first question.
Yep.
You've chosen to locate your books within New England, namely places with small towns,
Yep.
often communities that are adjacent to the woods or the ocean. Can you tell us what the appeal of writing New England locations has for your stories,
Mm.
and namely for Buoygeist, your latest book?
Yeah, I can look out my window and see what I'm writing about. So, I love to write about places that I've been, that I've spent time in, that I know what they look like, they smell like, I know what the people are like. Um, I like to be able to visit those places as I'm writing, so it's kind of convenient to live near these places. I can go to them. Almost every one of the books I've written part of the book in the place that I'm writing about, which is it makes it's easier. It makes everything more vivid. It uh, I I like the idea that people can read my books and go to some of these places as well. I think New England is there's so much there's so much here. Like this is some of the oldest as far as like the lifespan of the United States. Um, the infrastructure in New England and in some of the physical standing buildings are the oldest you can see in this country. And so it feels like there's the most opportunity for spooky stuff to happen because there's so much here that's rooted in really old, terrible things that have happened, and there's so much that's purportedly haunted around here. It's just sort of like, a wonderful buffet of things I could choose to write about or include in my stories. And so, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to write fantasy. That's actually how I experimented writing these epic sort of, fantastical, Middle Earth type,
Mhm.
things, and never really got far with them. But when I started writing about places that I just knew, it was much more natural for me.
Mhm.
So there's just so much in New England, and that's why some of the greatest uh, writers, some of the greatest horror novelists, live currently even or lived in and around this area. So
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I hear a lot in my day job, mostly because I'm in the outdoor sporting goods industry,
yeah,
is that we have that very unique combination of the ocean and the mountains and the woods.
mm,
Um, and that's and then the history combined with that just makes for a very tucked away, kind of unique
yep,
um feel. And 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 the other thing that has really struck me is that um you don't realize it when you live in a New England state for your whole life. But when you go anywhere else in the United States, people are always kind of amazed at the New England lifestyle a little
mhm,
bit.
yep,
Like the fact that it does seem very removed, it does seem kind of cloistered and uh on its own.
hmm
And it's fucking weird,
uh,
you know? Weird.
especially when all the tourists go away. I mean, it's weird when the tourists are here, but when they
Yeah,
all go away
it's
and
weird
you're
for
left,
us
yeah.
when they're here.
But when they're gone and all that remains is a frozen tundra, lifeless, dark. I grew up on Cape Cod, and nobody was ever there during the off season, and it was boring as hell, but super creepy at night too. That literally, I grew up in an area where there were no street lights, and so
Yeah,
nighttime nighttime was really nighttime there, and made everything scarier.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, I was just thinking about it now. I live in a house. There's no street lights on this road.
Yeah.
Certainly not in this stretch of road. Um, and it is scary. It's like the nearest neighbor is not within sight. Um, so anything could happen.
Yeah.
Uh,
Any
and sometimes does. And
Sure.
the weirdness of what could happen is very believable because it just seems like I don't know, it's just its own thing.
Your imagination can go a little wild. Yeah.
It can.
Mhm.
Um, people come up here to vacation or people come up here to that move up here are so I don't know. They're very confused, but also like they love the idea that it's such a idyllic kind of like rustic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um and that yeah, it's very slow. Um
Yeah.
and there's
Part,
not
but see, like
but
parts of it are really slow. That's what's great about New England
yeah,
is that you have those parts, but then you also have Boston, and you know what I
sure.
mean, like
Yeah.
smack dab in the middle of it. So I think that's one thing I like about New England is it's a bunch of unique areas kind of crammed together in a small section of the country.
Yeah, you can go to the big city, as it
Yep,
were, and then escape very easily.
very. Yep.
So, um, as far as Buoygeist goes, that takes
Hmm.
place on Cape Cod.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
and it takes place. Does it take place during the summer on Cape Cod?
It takes place in October on Cape
Okay,
Cod when the all the tourists are not there. So,
okay.
which was my favorite time. Like I didn't really love living down there, but it takes place, yeah, when the tourists are all gone, when it's darker. It's not quite winter because I wanted people to still be near the beach,
Hmm.
nearish. But yeah, it takes place at a time that I actually lived on Cape Cod. I lived in a different part of Cape Cod, but I lived closer to the bridges and which I affectionately call like fake Cape Cod because it's not like it's not as far removed. You're closer to the rest of the world, whereas this book is set on the other end of Cape
Hmm.
Cod that really is isolated.
Okay.
During the off season. And this was written during 1988, which is a time that, like I said, I was living on Cape Cod, so I have memories of what it was like then. And it's set in my opinion, 1988 was one of the coolest times for a horror fan. It so the amount I can't imagine what it would have been like to be of age to go to watch some of the movies that came out that year. So a lot of this book is set in a video rental store on Cape Cod in 1998. There's a drive-in right there, right near the video rental store. So it's just like there's tons of personal nostalgia for me in this, and um, it's really inspired by what, in my mind, was one of the greatest years of horror film. So that's why I said it at that time, and I surrounded the characters by movies I
Hmm.
surrounded them in movies, by movies, around movies. So
Fantastic year. Also the year I
yeah.
was born. So
Oh
horror.
wow, look at that! I didn't even know that. Yeah, I was alive, but I was not old enough to be watching, Nightmare on Elm Street. Like literally, that's at a time where there was a Nightmare on Elm Street movie every year. There was a Friday the 13th every year.
Mhm.
That year, Pumpkinhead came out, and uh, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and maybe Beetlejuice. Like it's a crazy year. Like
I was gonna say,
there's a
didn't
lot.
Chucky came out that year
Chucky, I
also?
believe that was the first Child's
Yeah.
Play came out that year. Like just imagine that. Like you'd be at the movie theater every day. Um, the amount. There's a lot more. I'm not even off the top of my head. Yeah. So one of the Halloween movies came out. It was a crazy, wild time.
Mhm. So, what was what made you, I mean, besides the fact that there were a lot of amazing films coming out,
Yeah.
how did you get the idea to place it inside of a video rental store or have that be a focal point?
So for me, growing up, I I feel like as an adolescent, as a younger than an adolescent, whatever that is, a young adult as well, I just inhabited our local video rental place on a different part of Cape Cod. And I can remember, just this is even before I was like super into reading horror. I read horror. I read R.L. Stein and Goosebumps, and
Mhm.
L.J. Smith, and Christopher Pike and a lot of that stuff at the time. But I read just as much fantasy and a lot of other things, and so really pushed me sort of into the horror genre. And was my love of horror film. And I, at the time, there was, at least for me at that age, there was very little sort of regulation on what I was able to ingest as far as media. And that was largely because it wasn't because it was just available necessarily on my screen at home. It was, I had this video rental place, and I used to bring my report card to this this particular local, mom and pop video rental place, and if I got all A's and B's on my report card, I could pick out like, a handful of free movies. And
Oh, man.
and this was a time like my parents didn't need to be there. They didn't have a question. Like, I would bring home a stack of horror, and walking those aisles, just looking at the covers, critters and ghoulies and everything that just mesmerized me, and I was transfixed. And so when I think of like what I want the cover of my book to look like, I want it to give someone the same feeling I got looking at those movie covers, the same feeling I got looking at like Goosebumps covers. I think the first horror novel I ever bought, like wasn't not from a library, not just like given to me, but I bought with my own money, was One Day at Horrorland by R.L. Stein. And I just stared at that cover, and that's sort of like what I often am trying to, what I am like when I talk to Gemma Moore, I talk to whoever's helping me with my cover. That's like sort of what I always say. Like, I wanted to give people that feeling. And so that's why I really wanted to feature a video rental store, because it meant so much to me as a young horror fan.
Yeah. I think this is like, this might be hard for people nowadays who are not familiar with the rental video store culture, but it was a very lawless place.
Oh my God.
Where like
it literally had a back room with a curtain that, you're supposed to go in.
Sure. I mean, there was that too, but it was very much like you walked in there and a million horror movie covers on display. First of all, and everything else too. I mean, and you would certain kids, maybe the two of us, had parents that kind of were okay with us looking, just having free reign. And some of my earliest memories of being in a video rental store are the horror movie covers, or, horror adjacent movie covers. Things like Candyman, things like Silence of the Lambs, like those covers, which I had no idea what they even were, stick with me because I was transfixed and also scared of them.
But see, let me ask you a question. Sometimes I hear people say like, I don't want to watch this, or I don't want to read that because it's too scary. Like, whenever I hear that, I think like, but I like being scared. I like when a movie scares me. I like when a book scares me, but I guess I'm learning there are people that don't like that feeling.
So it's a weird thing. It's kind of like this, there's an anxiety to it. You see something like that, and it's either a very thrilling, yes, this looks amazing and I want to see it, or it's a very like tentative kind of, I don't know about that. I don't know, that might be too scary for me. And those two were in the realm of it might be a little too scary for me.
Probably was, yeah.
Whereas I would see the cover of Jaws or, something like that, and I'd be like, yeah, this is rad. Let's watch this.
And see, like Jaws was legitimately terrifying, I thought, but I still loved it. I loved being terrified. Like, it's like, for me, it's the same feeling. Some people might get on a roller coaster, bungee jumping. Now I would never go bungee jumping, but like the same sort of thrill. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I I totally get that. Like those the covers in the video rental store. There's nothing like it. I don't think we'll ever duplicate that feeling. Now everyone's just on
Mhm.
Netflix or
Yep.
scrolling on their iPad. Like it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. Um, but then also just to add on the book covers, especially on the Goosebumps book covers, some of those
Yeah.
also were just like horrifying for a kid.
I have a whole shelf of Goosebumps right here. Like
Oh,
it's like
nice.
still like draw inspiration from those
Yeah.
and the feeling I got because that I think that's what made me at some point like that style of it, not necessarily R.L. Stine, but like that era of horror made me love horror, but made me a reader too. I think.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I got into Goosebumps because my brother had was, getting Goosebumps from the library. And ordinarily
Mm.
I wouldn't have gone for that kind of thing, but I was so like pulled in. Um,
How could you not be?
how could you not be? It came from Beneath the Sink, one of my favorites.
Oh, I loved One Day at Horrorland. Stay Out of the Basement.
That one
Some of
scares
the
me still.
say cheese and die. That freaked me out, but I loved them.
Yeah. How to Kill a Monster. Like that one
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
too.
Oh, there was one. Actually, the scariest one. I don't know why it scared me as much as it. Let's Get Invisible. I think it was
Oh
called.
yeah.
Freaked me out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was pretty scary actually. And it did like for reasons that are not obvious on the cover. There was a lot more to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um I feel like I already asked my question that I was that I was going to ask, but I didn't quite ask the same way.
Okay.
So obviously Cape Cod coastal horror. Um
Mm-hmm.
the novel takes us from the video store to the beach.
Yep.
Can you tell us about uh writing ocean horror and coastal New England horror?
There's so much mystery beyond the where the sand disappears into the ocean. I think I've read, somewhere that we know more about our solar system and what's beyond it than we know about the ocean here on our very own planet. And there's something so terrifying about that, and
Mhm.
how little of it we've explored, which means who's to say what's there, what we don't know about. Um, and I do still spend a lot of time, like my family's down in that area of the Cape, maybe once every summer or something like that. So it's still very vivid, that area for me.
Mhm.
And still, if you go anywhere after the sun's is down, you see nothing but darkness.
Mhm.
And at the same time, you see so much of this night sky, and I know that's the same, very similar in Maine, but that's not necessarily the case in other parts of Massachusetts. Some,
Yeah.
but um, that part of Cape Cod is more removed from a
Mhm.
lot, and so I it to me, that's one of my favorite places. Like I did not associate really with Cape Cod as a kid and the area that I lived in, but we that the Eastham and the Wellfleet area and Provincetown, that's more where this book is set. Um, I really do sort of connect with now as an adult, and so it almost was like taking myself as a youth, though uh, I wasn't the age these characters were in 1988.
Mhm.
These are like college age kids, but it was almost like taking myself and letting myself live in the part of the Cape that I now really do see myself associating more with. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just the ocean. It's there's almost nothing as horrifying as that, especially if you stand on the beach at night and just listen to the waves, and you all you see are the stars over your head, and nothing out into the water. That's something that's scary.
There can be. It's funny the whole time you're describing that, I'm thinking like, oh, that sounds so beautiful. Not
Like,
horrifying, but that just
oh,
sounds like
it can also be beautiful.
yeah.
There's a lot of horror in beautiful things, and the other way
That's
around.
so true.
Yep.
Um, so not a question that I sent you, but the titular Bowie Geist.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about the monster slash the book without
Yeah.
spoiling anything for us?
Sure. So it's a. I want to try to slasher, which I had not done, and I wanted the slasher to be set in the time of slashers in my brain. So like the 80s, 1988 in particular. Um, the Bowie Geist, it's a supernatural slasher,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, without giving too much away, there's a marina in Wellfleet, really, but I sort of said it in Eastham in this book, and I there's I have this thing with like legends and people doing the thing they know they're not supposed to do in books, and then they
Yep.
do it anyway, and something terrible happens. So like I know it's preposterous, and I know like your people must be screaming when they read these, but why are you doing that? Obviously, like don't do that. Like, but I still love it, and I still make
Mm-hmm.
people do the stupid stuff. So, yeah, there's this this community, and people have grown up knowing, like, just in their bones and in their blood, to avoid this Bowie Geist. I don't think they even know necessarily why. It's something everyone there knows.
Mm-hmm.
And there's rumors about what that means and what could happen if you get too close to it. But people don't want to test it out. The locals, the people who live there, respect it, and
Yep.
never, never tempt fate. And it takes someone coming from outside of this community to do what everyone else knew better not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And something really bad happens, and it takes place over the course of one night. So
Okay.
it's a really chaotic,
Awesome.
very cinematic story, fast paced, like you were watching a movie, like you were watching a
Awesome.
horror movie in 1988. And yeah, I can't say too much more, but it's very bloody, and it really does heavily feature the ocean. It heavily features a video rental store, which the main character works at. It heavily features a drive-in, like things that were just like that ooze that time period. And for what it's worth, that there's still a drive-in on the Cape. Actually, in Wellfleet, again, I said everything in Eastham, but there's a drive-in in Wellfleet. So like a lot of this is like burned into my brain. But this is a really terrible thing that needs to do all its terrible things in one night. So
Awesome.
that's yeah. So that's
So
what I can say.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get this from you when I see you in a couple weeks. I'm very excited.
Can you believe we're 2 weeks away from?
So,
Are you driving down 2 weeks from now?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are talking about AuthorCon, and that
Yes.
is an event that happens yearly down in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Hmm.
It's sponsored by Scares That Care, which is an organization that uh, is charitable, goes towards 3 people in need for medical bills every year. Very awesome, wonderful organization that you can donate to any time of the year. But this particular event is run for books and bookish people, and features a whole variety of authors and events, readings, panels, things like that. And we'll both be there this year, and it's going to
Yeah.
be so awesome. And that's where we met, also.
It's so weird because we
Yeah,
just live like a state or two away, you know. But yeah, we met in Williamsburg
yeah,
a couple years ago. Yeah, so I did not go last year. Took a
yeah,
year off because I wanted, I didn't have anything brand new out last year at that time. So, and it's a lot. It's a lot to get yourself down there
yep.
and do the whole thing, especially for an introvert like me. That's like, because that is like everybody's there and they're around you all the time.
Yeah,
You can't escape unless you like go into your hotel room and lock the door.
yeah,
It is, yeah. So it's in the best way. It's overwhelming, um,
yes,
but you meet so many cool people who love this genre, you know, as much as we do. So that's a really cool and very, very unique experience. So I'll put myself out there at least every other year, probably.
yeah, yeah. It's really cool. A couple of years ago, we happened to be tabling across from one another.
Yeah.
So, um, and uh, and then I've seen you at other cons since, which is also
This area.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that we can do these things, we get out and actually interact with humans uh, once in a while.
Well, if you see me slinking into the shadows there 2 weeks from now, you know, invite
Yeah.
me over or something, because
Oh yeah.
I like having the barrier of the table, and I actually liked last time I had a wall behind me so no one could sneak up behind me. I could.
Yeah, you might not. You might not
I
get a
know.
wall this
I
time.
know. I was probably really lucky that. Yeah. Now that watch, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to this time. I'll deal with it.
They used to do. They used to give you table like lineups and tell you where you were going to be, and they don't do that anymore. And I understand why they don't do it anymore.
Yeah, as people drop out every day. It's a lot.
Yeah. But 2 weeks, if you're in and around Virginia, or you know any of the nearby states, and you want to come up for a really cool event, you should put it on your calendar.
And bring like a wagon for all the books you're going to buy, because
Exactly. Bring a wagon. There are people who do have wagons that they fill with books.
It's crazy.
So,
Crazy in a wonderful way. Like I love
yes, the best way.
Yes. Buy all the books. And I'm definitely one of those people that's, you don't have to buy books just to read them. You can buy books just to have them and to collect them. I'm surrounded by them right now. So books that I have bought and I wholeheartedly plan to read. But yeah.
Yep, that is very similar to my book collection. Intention is there, but actuality, you know,
oh yeah,
someday. But I very much look forward to adding Bowie Guys to my Tom Reimer collection. I have 3 of your books at the moment.
I have at least a couple of yours right over here. I have a Wild Dark, and I have Monstrum Chronicles, right?
Oh yeah,
for Vox, the first one.
Yep. I think I need to get a couple more of your glowing books. I have one of the glowing books, but
I want to get Boreal. I know you're going to have copies of that, right?
I definitely will.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I'll have everything. I'm gonna have the most Buigeist just because it's the
Yeah.
newest, but I'll have smattering
Okay.
things.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Um, and while we're on the subject of Buigeist again,
Mm.
uh, are there any other New England states besides Massachusetts? Because that's you've covered
I've
Massachusetts
really covered it. Yeah,
well.
all sides of it. Yeah.
Um, are there any other New England states that you've been wanting to highlight in forthcoming works or
Yes. Well,
projects?
and to be clear, Massachusetts isn't the only New England state. Maine has appeared a couple of times as well in my
Okay.
books. More so, the books themselves aren't fully set in Maine, but in the glowing in particular, which is sort of eventually pretty apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic. We do see the characters venture to the Wells Beach area, which was which is sort of touristy area, but um, in this story, nothing's left, and it's pretty
Mhm.
depressing. Also, seaside communities. So yeah, we do get up into Maine a little bit in the glowing. Maybe the second or third book, I forget. Um, but I do want to write about. I recently visited Newport. It was for it was a special sort of trip for my 40. I turned 40 a little while ago, and so we went and stayed in a haunted mansion in Newport. And I actually read while I was there. It was so awesome. I read the entirety of Clay McLeod Chapman's Ghost Eaters,
Oh
which is not
God.
set in New
Yeah.
England as far as I know, but it was really cool experience and made me like I spooked myself and
Hmm.
in a good way. And so I was like, I want to write. There's so much here in Newport. I want to set something in Newport. And it'll give me
Cool.
more excuse to go hang out there more because there's some haunted spots, old haunted spots there. Like just I love those places where buildings from the 16 and 1700s are still standing.
Hmm.
It's just so amazing. So I have that as an idea. What else do I want to do? Oh, I mean, that's what jumps to mind. I can't think too far ahead. I usually am
Hmm.
like I can think I'm one book out. Maybe I'll be working on some short stories at the same time, but
Hmm.
rarely can I get further than that. So I whether it's my next book or not, I'm not. I have notes for a Newport story. We'll say that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Um, make sure I'm not missing anything else here. Do you think you'll write books that take place outside of New England? And if
I
so, where would you most like to write a story in?
you know I mean I probably will. But I'm not 100% sure of that. There's so much more, even in just this state in Massachusetts, I still want to write about, and I can only write so much. But probably, yeah. I think, I I'll have to bring myself to do more research, and I like that I just know these places so well. But
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, I'd love to write a story set in the Marshall Islands where I used to live.
Hmm.
Where I lived for a year. Um, I I'd love to write a story set in London. Um, Other U.S. areas, I don't know. I don't know. I think I got to
Hmm.
visit more places. I think I'm wolf. Like I've traveled to other states uh, in the U.S., but woefully under traveled. I guess I love Williamsburg.
Hmm.
Actually,
Yeah.
in Virginia, I could see myself writing something set there. But that's again, I love old stuff. I love I love places like that. That's one of the oldest. Again, as far as the United States is considered, I know, relatively speaking, very young country.
Yeah, Williamsburg is a really cool town,
Yeah.
because there's so much new just butting up against so
Hmm.
much old,
That's what
uh,
making of
and
a good story.
yeah, and it's a really cool place. Another reason to come, guys.
Uh-huh.
Just saying. A lot of really cool bars and a lot of really old houses and cobblestone and
Great breakfast places.
yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that. Maybe
What are
Capital Pancake House.
is that the one? I went to one that's like in an old house. Is that what I'm thinking of? I don't know.
So there's Capital Pancake House and there's Colonial
I
Pancake
went
House.
I went to Colonial that last
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So and it's I think there's a debate about which is the better of the two because they're both very wonderful.
Yeah.
We've glommed onto the Capital Pancake House because of the
Okay.
breakfast uh breakfast margaritas.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know that was a thing. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Authentic to Williamsburg, I'm sure.
Yes. Very much
Yes.
so.
Breakfast margaritas.
Yep. You can feel the history. Let's see, where am I here? Well, a question that you uh you brought up that I'm actually very interested to know more about.
Yeah.
You have mentioned that a lot of your ideas come from nightmares.
Hmm.
So I would love to know a little more about that.
Um, yeah, I've said this before on I've been on different shows, and so I've spoken publicly about this before, but a lot almost everything I've ever written started as a nightmare.
Hmm.
Um, and I when I say nightmare, that is not a negative, that is not a pejorative. That is I think I love my nightmares, and I used to keep like a literal notepad next to me, and when I would wake up, I just write bullet points of like something that happened. And now, I have my phone next to me, and there's the notepad on my phone, and I'll jot a couple notes when I wake up, because if I don't, I won't
Mhm.
remember it. And then what I'll often do is, either right then when I try to go back to sleep, or another time, another night, I'll try to go back to that,
Hmm.
that nightmare that I was having, and try to fall asleep thinking about it, just to see what else might happen and how far the story goes. Um and sometimes I'm able to like kind of continue the story a little bit. And um I know, isn't it? It's kind of a cool, that's how I fall asleep. Like, it's almost like telling myself a story, like a
Hmm.
bedtime story. And I do think sometimes there are some nightmares that I can't, that this sounds like clinical, but sometimes they're like stuck in there. And
Mhm.
until I write it down and like get it out, get it onto paper, I
Mhm.
just keep doing it over and over again. And so every book I published was, at least in part, a piece of a nightmare. Or uh, when it comes to my book OD Schools, like literally very, very much an like actual nightmare that I had,
Hmm.
to a lot of the details in that. So to me, nightmares are really important, and it's how that I sort of, some people will, they'll get their story ideas in the shower, or
Mhm.
they get inspiration from many other places. But my stories, yep, they start in my brain when I'm sleeping, usually, which is, it's a little weird, but I'm I'm confident in
Hmm.
with what I'm doing, so I like
I
it.
think I think the craziest thing is the fact that you're able to like go back to
Yeah.
a nightmare and just be like, "Oh, this is where I put the bookmark in. Okay,
So
here we
sometimes
go."
Sometimes I like it's like I'm awake, I'm conscious, or a lot of the time, and I'm just like there's this like Malevolent Never takes place in a haunted mansion, and I literally would go to like try to fall asleep walking through the halls of that old Victorian mansion and opening different doors and seeing what was behind them. And sometimes I literally fall asleep doing that. And it helps me to really build a story and lucid dreaming. Yeah. Flesh it out.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. But my wife had the same reaction though. She can't do that and she doesn't understand.
Uh, so as a kid, I had recurring nightmares
Hmm.
sometimes, but never lucid dreaming, never a point where I felt like I was in control of anything.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're able to control stuff is just really cool.
At least when I'm like falling asleep, I'm
Yeah.
sure when I'm like
Yeah.
asleep, I'm not, there's no control, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
if you want to see what was going on in my brain when I was
mhm.
asleep, you should read some of my books.
Was Buigeist also?
Yeah, but more than anything I've written, Bowie Geist was I took more from life life as far as like nostalgia and
Mhm.
yeah, it was I still like took the idea and ran with it a little bit, but maybe not as much as Odious Schools or Malevolent Nevers or even The Glowing.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit different, but I did run it through the old what I don't know, what do you want to call it, my nightmare for a little bit, my brain.
Cool. 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 Um, I I have one book that I've written based on a nightmare.
Which one?
The collection,
Oh,
actually,
oh,
which had living taxidermy in it, which was pretty horrifying.
yeah.
Um, and it was just a scene. It was just a very quick,
I was
like,
gonna ask like if it was the whole thing or it was just a part of it.
yeah, no, it was a scene. I was in it felt like this big kind of open sort of conservatory like room, and there was a table, and they had these mounted taxidermy animals, including lions,
Mm,
and I was walking around and they were moving, and that kind of freaked me out. And I woke up and I was and then it stuck with me, and I knew that I had to write something like that, uh,
so next
featuring.
so next time you're going to sleep, then take that idea and walk around with it a little bit. Check it
Yeah,
out a little bit more. See what happens. You never know.
that's true. No. No, I think the idea of trying to develop more creative ideas based on books when you're falling asleep is actually a really good one. And I do that, not to the point where I'm able to then dream about it, um, but thinking about it at a point where your mind just kind of gets a little squirrely, you're able to just kind of let it go a little more.
Hmm.
Uh, it it works. It definitely works. Um, you don't have all of these other thoughts intruding at the time.
Hmm. One of my
So,
favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes ever, and I don't. It doesn't necessarily kind of connect it to this, if you will, but like Jack Kerouac quote said, "Human beings are also dream beings. Dreaming ties all mankind together."
mm,
And I like believe that with my soul. Like
yeah,
I feel like dreams are. There's a lot we
great
don't know about
quote.
dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that quote. Um, let's see here. Uh, oh, Attack of the
Nope.
Cat.
Lucid dream behind you.
Yeah.
She looks like a blur right now. So
Yeah, so this is lemon jelly, and he's he's going to be stoic behind me. Um, New England is more than just about the landscape and the small towns. It's about the
Yeah.
people who inhabit them. What are some of your favorite New England characters that you've created who couldn't exist anywhere else but there?
I can think of a couple in particular that couldn't exist anywhere else. In Malevolent Nevers, well, first of all, in Malevolent, like it takes place in a home that's existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, like the same building, and so there's a family that's lived there that it has passed this home down generation to generation.
Mhm.
So there's already just like a lot of New England blood flowing through that building. But there's another character, sort of a side character in that story. He's like a 101-year-old in that book. Yeah, surprisingly spry for his age, and just the way he talks, he couldn't be from anywhere else.
Okay.
You know, he's from Massachusetts. You can hear him
Mhm.
without hearing him. And so I'd say he is old New England, and even more so because he's been around for so long. He's 101. So I'd say that guy. And then in Odie's Schools, the main character, uh, Tabitha Fowl, she returns. She also is part of a pretty notable bloodline, and returns to Stowe, Massachusetts, and you know, in part because of a nightmare she had, which is a nightmare I had.
Okay.
And she, you know, she returns to an old plot of family land, Fowl Meadow. And the joke is that it's Foul and not Fowle, which is her actual
Mhm.
last name. And her, again, it's only a centuries old New England family, like salt of the earth, colonial era, probably, where the original members of this family passing down this legend to her,
Mhm.
which she has to investigate. And only because she's of their blood can she make what happens happen. And so I think she and her family, the Fowles, could only exist in Massachusetts.
That's cool.
Most everything else in my books, it's the places that are sort of also living, breathing characters,
Mhm.
that quite literally could not exist anywhere else because they
Yep.
are fictionalized versions of real places. And I always say that fictionalized because if I don't, it's a cover my butt, because there have been people who say, well, wait a minute, that street's not there. Like, have you ever even been there before? Like, yeah, it's a work of fiction. There also aren't aliens that have invaded this, as far as I know, this community and annihilated every. It's
Yeah.
not real. So,
Yeah.
but there, like, I've had literally people write reviews saying like, what is that? What, that's not there. Like, so the fictionalized versions of these
Yeah.
places.
And I think that's fair. I mean, I have also had that happen.
You have.
And it's hard to just be like, well, like just sort of like, let your mind run with it a little bit.
Yep.
Like it's all not all meant to be super accurate. I really hope
Mm-hmm.
that no one, takes one of my books to the White Mountains and tries to use it as a way to go along the trails.
Although that would be pretty cool if someone did that.
I mean, it'd be cool, but man, they'd be dead. let's look for this trail. It doesn't exist.
You need to put a disclaimer at the front of your book.
Yeah.
Do not use this as a
Not a
guide.
map. Not a substitute for a map.
Not a cartographer.
No. We're into the wrap-up portion of our show.
Okay.
Which means I'm basically I ask these people the same questions every time.
Mm-hmm.
But before we start, there's a comment here from Jose.
Oh.
Who's saying, never been to Maine, but a pen pal gifted me a book called Strange Maine by Michelle Solier. I have that book too, actually. Good stuff. I'm brought to mind you had a Dr. Dove who claims he made a unicorn. I have not read this book yet. Michelle Solier is actually the book owner of The Green Hand, which is a very well-known bookstore in Portland. She writes books about cryptids, and she's written, obviously, this book called Strange Maine. As far as Dr. Dove and the unicorn goes, this is not a story that I know. But it sounds very much like somebody from Maine would claim something like this. So I will have to look that up. But on to my wrap-up questions here for you, Tom.
Sure.
Some of your favorite New England horror films or television shows or books or games. I actually don't know any games, but
so whether I'm not big into games, but I can definitely do books and movies. So there's a lot of debate on where Shirley Jackson's Hill House is supposed to take place, and what it's based on. And there are a lot of people say, oh, it's based on this house on this college campus, or it's based on this building here, this old mansion. I think actually at least the movies and the show that were based on the book are set in Massachusetts. And off the top of my head, I think the original book is itself set in Massachusetts as well. And I think so much, obviously so much Gothic horror, but horror in general has a lot, really a lot we owe a lot to Shirley Jackson. So I'd say Hill House. I'd say, obviously, everything Stephen King has ever written, pretty much.
Hard not to
yeah.
name Stephen King.
Let's see. I was thinking about this before I jot. Oh, so Robert Eggers' The Witch. Anything set in Salem, Hocus Pocus. As a kid, even as an adult, love that. The Reanimator, Jaws. I'm talking a lot of movies here.
Yep.
Books. One I really loved that I read recently. Christopher Golden wrote All Hallows. It's set in a fictional Massachusetts community, but it just is. It's so New England. It's so. I just love that. Let's see. Paul Tremblay. It's written. Most of his stuff, I think, takes place in Massachusetts. At least, maybe not Cabin in the Woods, or Cabin at the end of the World, but let's see. The Pallbearers Club and A Head Full of Ghosts take place in Massachusetts, in real communities in Massachusetts. Those are. Did I say Jaws? Jaws.
Yep.
Everything written by Catherine Silva, of course.
Not everything. Not everything.
Not everything. Okay.
No.
Monstrum Chronicles are not in New England, right?
Most of them are not. One book has a scene that has a main scene, a few scenes, but the rest are not. And God, The Deadlands is not set
Oh, I haven't read that
necessarily
yet. Okay.
in New England. That's one that's kind of like you don't know where it is, but it's not necessarily New England. So
Okay. Could it be? No.
it could be,
Okay.
but it's really like kind of nebulous in
Nebulous.
terms of where it is.
What about you? Do you have any favorite New England set stories or
Uh,
movies?
I so I'm going to be a little biased, but one of my favorite books that I've read in recent years is by one of our Boreal contributors, E.M. Roy. She wrote a book called I'm not going to be able to remember it. I'm so
That's
sorry,
okay.
Ellie. It's called the Let the Woods. Oh shit! I can't believe I'm not gonna be able to
I think
think of
that's
it.
the title.
It's like
That's not the title.
Let the Woods Keep Our Bodies, I think is what it's
Okay.
called. And it's published by Ghoulish Books, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and it is a phenomenal small town horror Maine book. Um, about like disappearances and ghostly happenings. Um, and yeah, just a solid entry. And then another one that I really liked was Rory Powers' book. And I'm not going to be able to remember the name of that one either, because my memory has turned to sludge at this so late hour of the
This
evening.
ungodly hour.
Um, oh my god! Now I have to look it up because I'm
That's
Wilder
okay.
Girls. Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Wilder Girls is a great story. It's a YA horror that takes place in Maine on an island in Maine. Um and it's quite good. Keeps you guessing uh until the end. Um and then honestly, I haven't read a whole lot of New England focused horror otherwise. I did read Aquino Loaiza's
Oh, yeah. I should have
takes
mentioned
place
that.
in Maine. That would be the only other one that I've read.
That's
Um,
very good. I've read that. Very, very.
yep.
That's
Uh,
so New England.
very cosmic.
Um,
Yeah, very cosmic horror,
have,
Maine.
have you ever read Burnt Offerings?
I have
Classic horror.
not. That's
Oh,
classic, and I have
yeah,
not. There's a lot of classic horror I have not
yeah.
read, and I'm ashamed to say.
But there's so much.
Um,
There's so much good stuff coming out now too. How can you pick? Like you
there
can't.
is. It's hard, and I've already admitted this on a past podcast. I admitted this, I think, on Clay's podcast, but I have not read any Stephen King. Um, I have read one
It's
short
okay.
story, uh, and
Okay. If well, everyone's gonna have their own opinion, right? If
yeah,
you ever, I'll give you mine. If you want it, well, you maybe you don't even want it, but if you read any of his, this may be surprising. Read On Writing, which
I do have on writing.
that's what I
Um,
would say. I would say, I mean, I love The Shining, but like personally, that would be my favorite if I had to pick. Would be actually On Writing. I would say it's the most different of anything he's written. And if you only read one thing, read On Writing.
yeah, I it is not. This is solely not because like I have not wanted to read his stuff. I do. I desperately would love to sit down and crack open a book.
1100 pages.
They are very intimidating. Some of them are
Yes,
very intimidating.
most.
And uh and so I'm just like, yeah, I've struggled to. I did start listening to Billy Summers on an
Okay.
audiobook. I have not finished. So that is the only other um thing that I have read by him. The short story I've read, which was amazing, was The Road Virus Heads North. And it's a great, like, haunted painting short story. Made me think very much of things like House of Leaves and what's the Velvet, there's a movie about, like, haunted art, and
I can't think.
Yeah. It was so good. It had Jake Gyllenhaal in it.
It sounds familiar.
Buzzsaw.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't see that one.
It's a great movie. That's one that stays with me, that not many people have watched, so I recommend it.
Okay. I'll take that recommendation.
So those are my recommendations. And then I guess my last question is, what are you working on right now? What you got going on?
I am actually writing a lot of short stories right now. That likely will end up as my first collection, which I've never done. I think it started as my inability to decide what I want to commit myself to. For me, like writing, probably for everyone actually, but writing, I'm not a good multitasker. I'll say that. So when I start writing something, I can't write anything else. I'm literally just I only can focus on the one book at a time. I'm the same way with reading. I'm not someone who could jump between two different books. I can read one book at a time, and I can write a book. Sometimes I can't even read and write at the same time. Like I literally have to just write, and then when I'm done, then I'll read a ton, and then I'll start writing again. But like specifically, so like when I do finally decide on something, I want to make sure it's something I'm okay living with for a long time, and characters I want to be around for a while, and so I haven't committed to the next big project. I'm sort of have ideas floating around. So I've been working on these smaller stories that I don't have to live with for quite as long, and I can quickly jump on to writing something new. There's no title for this collection yet, but I think that will be the next thing that comes out for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's sort of different, but who knows? I may start suddenly writing the next book and get stuck, but we'll see.
Is there a particular theme with this collection, do you think, or is it just kind of
I've written a lot of the stories are clown centric.
Oh God. Okay. To be clowns.
Yeah. But I also have they're largely clown centric. Yeah. What am I? I'm trying to like tell you it's something that it's not. No, it's clowns. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's one that I'm like, yeah, clowns are terrifying.
Yeah.
All seriousness, super not a fan. Like,
yeah, I get it.
If I happen to encounter one in real life,
was that a karate chop motion you were just
like? There has to be a minimum distance between me and a clown, and typically that's like 20 feet.
Don't dress as a clown at AuthorCon.
Yeah. I'm just not a fan.
That's one of those things. The elevator doors open up. You don't want a clown standing there that you have to get in the elevator with.
No, that is an instant hell no.
Pass.
So
I just got a great idea for a new story. Elevator clown.
Your
Got it. Yeah.
nightmare-inducing collection that you're working on.
Hmm.
Hell no. I may have to skip that one.
I've never seen I've never seen a clown in an elevator, but I once met. This is the first time I ever met Robatone was in an elevator, and the
Yep, that's a clown elevator.
doors opened up and he climbed in and he said, "You're Tom Reimer," and I said, "Yes, I am." That's the only time in my life anyone has ever said that to me.
Well, that's adorable.
Yeah,
And
he tells that story sometimes too.
yes, no, he does. No, he Rob is a
He's a good guy.
wonderful human being.
Who, by the way, wrote the blurb on the front of my book.
Aha!
So, see what elevators can do.
Yep. You never know. I mean,
Clowns, Rob.
clowns and Rob. Yes. Clown Rob. Well, that's how we're ending the program.
Unexpected.
I'm being attacked by a gnat. Oh my god. Get out of my blanket.
Not your cat, but a gnat.
A gnat. Attacking cat. Probably had a little clown mask on. Thank you
Thank you
for coming on and talking about New England horror and nightmares and clowns and VHS, awesome VHS memories and everything else. This is, I think, the longest episode that we've ever had.
Oh, that's great.
Winterviews. Wow. So you have a record, and I can't wait for everybody that couldn't make it tonight to tune in and check this out. Next week, we have a double dose of episodes again, because our wonderful Sam Richard was not able to make it last week. We will have him on Wednesday night, and that is Wednesday, March 19th at 8 o'clock. We will be talking about weird fiction with Sam that night. And then on the 20th, we get to have the lovely JC Morris in the studio to talk all about Indigenous horror.
Very cool.
And JC is my my editor, my co-editor over at Third Estate. So I'm very excited to get to talk to him also. Just a lovely batch of people this season. So thank you all who came out to watch us tonight. In our chat this evening, we had Jose, also
Jose.
going by J.R. Santos, who happens to be one of our authors in Boreal. So it was very nice to see you in the chat this evening. Thanks for coming out, Jose. We'll see you all next week. I hope you guys all have a wonderful night, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.